Every year, Bill and Melinda Gates release a letter talking about their philanthropic efforts. This year, the letter is all about the future, specifically how technology will dramatically change the lives of the poor in just the next 15 years. That's exactly the sort of thing we think about at The Verge, so we asked Bill Gates if he would be our guest editor in February as we explore the 4 areas he thinks will undergo the most change. As you might have guessed, Bill agreed, and I spent the afternoon with him talking about his vision for the next 15 years. He also talked a little smack about Bitcoin.
It's kind of a special year because the foundation's now 15 years old, and also this year we have the UN looking at the Millennium Development Goals, which were the world's progress from 1990 to 2015, and adopting the next 15 years of goals. So what can we get done by 2030? So we pick health, education, farming, and banking and say, we think some very dramatic things can happen. In fact, we go as far as to say we bet that life for the poorest will improve more in this 15-year period than it ever has before.
So let's get right into the 4 areas. I want to start with health because I think that is where you're making both a set of big bets on what technology can do and on what just fixing the infrastructure can do. So what are the sort of the 2 areas that you see happening in health?
Yeah, health is where we've spent the most money. The majority of our work has been there. Part of that is the upstream science, inventing new vaccines, and part of it's been the downstream. Once you have those vaccines, how do you get them out to all the world's children?
All right, everybody, how y'all doing? Welcome to the video. I'm 8 Thoughts. Appreciate y'all coming on by, checking out the video. Hope you're all doing well. And ladies and gentlemen, got a video here for you today. I touched on it on my last video. We talked about the coronavirus a little bit towards the end. A lot of you might have missed it, so I figured this deserves its own video because this rabbit hole, which is not even really a rabbit hole, but based on facts and how I think, in my opinion, not trying to fear monger, but I put 2 and 2 together, put the big brain in use, have come to kind of a conclusion. It's a theory that is, based upon some weird coincidences and some facts that have taken place here in Canada as well as in China with arrests. And it kind of seems like to me that maybe this outbreak and this pandemic that is slowly, well, not pandemic yet, but the beginnings of a pandemic, and how the government of China reacted so crazy and just went off the chain right away with very few people sick, and how they seem to have overreacted. It seems like they knew something about this virus before anyone else did and knows how deadly it can be and how contagious it can be, because I think that this coronavirus is either a biological weapon that got snuck out of the level 4 biological lab in Wuhan, or through someone's negligence was released. Let me just explain this to you here first of all, because some of you may not know what's going on as far as like the logistics of the situation. But let's start at the beginning first. So this theory of mine is also based upon some fan theories as well that are a year or 2 old. But like I said, my theory is based upon facts. But anyways, the point is that if you know about the video game Resident Evil, the Umbrella Corporation was a biotechnological company that dealt with, biological warfare and all kinds of crazy stuff, and the virus released into the world and created zombies, and, they had a bunch of movies, and the video games takes place in a raccoon city, and the evil Umbrella Corporation. And now in China, there's a biotechnological corporation that is into pharmaceuticals as well, that is in China, and I believe it's in Wuhan as well. In Resident Evil, the Umbrella Corporation is an evil biotechnology and pharmaceutical conglomerate. Shanghai Ruyang Baihao Susan Biotech Limited is also in biotechnology and, as Chinese Resident Evil fans point out, has a similar logo. Their offices and their labs are in Wuhan. So we come now to also this situation that occurred in Canada. Now, if you don't know as well, level 4 labs are the highest level security level labs in the world that deal with the most deadly and communicable diseases in the world. Ebolas and black plagues and all kinds of typhoid and every kind of crazy disease, and just every single virus that could be, considered the highest level threat to humanity are in these labs. And they create viruses as well, and they do research, and who knows what's going on in them. And there's only so many labs in this world. The one lab in Canada that has a level 4 ranking is in Winnipeg. And the couple other ones, there's a couple in China, and one in the last couple of years was just built, and that would be in Wuhan, China. Canadian government scientists under investigation trained staff at level 4 lab in China in Wuhan. I have to throw this into the video right now. This is post-production. I found this out while doing more research, but there seems to have been a patent for the coronavirus that has already been filed in the European Patent Office, patent number EP3172319B1. The application was filed by the Pitt Bright Institute and Pitt Bright Industry. Bill Gates funds this Pitt Bright Institute, which owns now the patent on this coronavirus, and draws into all kinds of questions now about what actually is really going on. As it says here, depopulation for profit, and who really knows now what is the end game here and what's really going on. But I thought I'd just throw this in as I found it. But now we'll continue back into the video, and we put all this together now for the pieces of the puzzle. It's all really starting to make a lot of sense. So this happened back in July. So this lady here, to give you the cliff notes, Chinese doctor, Jingjiao Wei, her biologist husband, and her students have not returned to work at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg after being escorted out in July. RCMP are still investigating what was described by Public Health Agency of Canada as a possible policy breach. So this Canadian this scientist who was trained at the Level 4 lab in Wuhan, China, was working in the Level 4 lab here in Winnipeg, Canada, and they obviously did something wrong. The Canadian government and the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, haven't really, they never divulged actually what happened, but they have never returned, and I believe I don't know what the hell they're doing, but this Chinese doctor here, who was trained in the Level 4 lab in Wuhan with massive, crazy, scary viruses, was working in Canada and was kicked out, basically, and who knows what happened. Now, when you put that together with the fact that there is a virus that no one knows about and not sure what's going on, that apparently has mutated in China, that originated in Wuhan, where the Level 4 lab for biological, research, and I don't know what the hell they're doing over there. Maybe they're creating biological weapons that deal with the most communicable and dangerous diseases in the world, happens to be. And this lady here, Dr. Jingjiao Wei, trained there and still had ties with the Chinese government, but was arrested 6 months ago in Canada from a Level 4 lab, the only one in Canada, and her husband and her students, and they've all been kicked out because they did something wrong, something criminal. RCMP doesn't get involved if it's like they did something silly, like, oh, not a big deal, hey man, you forgot to put away the milk in the staff room and it went bad, shame on you, Jingjiao. Like, no, RCMP don't get called up for some kind of discipline like that. It's a criminal case. So she did something that would be considered criminally negligent, like, I don't know. So you put those two together, and then we can add even more to this problem with this. So we have some kind of weird connections now between China and Canada and Level 4 biomedical labs that deal with crazy ass diseases like the coronavirus and SARS and Ebola and Black Plague and syphilis and typhoid and all kinds of and H1Z1 and bird flus, right? And then we put this together, and like now the virus originated from Wuhan, where this lady trained, and but forget that. Let's look at the response of the Chinese government and how fast they went. Like, shut the city down, put everybody on quarantine. There's only 3,000 cases, not that big of a deal, but we're canceling Chinese New Year, the biggest celebration of the Lunar New Year, whatever it is for China, the biggest celebration of their lives, pretty.
There's one area, though, where the world isn't making much progress. And the story is actually quite a negative one if we don't get serious about it, and that's pandemic preparedness. It should concern us all, because history has taught us there will be another deadly global pandemic. We can't predict when, but given the continual emergence of new pathogens, the increasing risk of a bioterror attack, and how connected our world is through air travel, there is a significant probability of a large and lethal modern-day pandemic occurring in our lifetimes. In the real world, the health infrastructure we have for normal times breaks down very rapidly during major infectious disease outbreaks. It's especially true in poor countries. But even in the US, our response to a pandemic or widespread bioterror attack would be grossly insufficient. Several things in the last decade have made me pay close attention to the risk of future pandemics. One was the outbreak of swine flu in 2009. While H1N1 wasn't as lethal as people initially feared, it showed our inability to track the spread of disease and develop new tools for public health emergencies. The Ebola epidemic in West Africa 4 years ago was another wake-up call. As confirmed cases climbed, the death toll mounted, and local health systems collapsed. Again, the world was much too slow to respond and didn't have answers for questions that were known that we'd have to face, including how to draw in private sector technologies. Now, we do have some new tools that we didn't have a century ago. We have a seasonal flu vaccine.
我今天已经上了一天的班，已经下班了，4点多钟下班，已经在那里崩溃了半天了。真的那种感染，比这个电视那里报道的可怕不过了，蛮多。他们医生出来的估计大概有10万人，我们今天那里10几个医生，一天都看了100多个。蛮多都已经不行了，没得位置住，然后家属在那里闹，说政府的不是说到你们那里治吗？但是政府让我们开始治，根本什么物资都没有，他们想办主任都办不了，我觉得后续完全不行。我们在那里上一天班，整个人的心里都快崩溃了，都已经受不了了。他们在那求我们的时候，我们都一点办法都没得。就看到一个好生生的人，叫他慢慢的都不行，所以你们在屋里一定要做好防护，千万不要等到说相信政府。
3具尸体已经在这里躺了一个上午了，有的人已经是凌晨死的，到现在没有人来处理。然后医生、护士还有病人全部都在这种环境下面工作。这就是定点医院的现状，没有任何人管。刚刚找领导，没有领导。领导也解决不了。
我在汉口火车站，全部是武警把守，10点以后的票全部都不让走了，不让进了。火车站滞留了很多的游客、旅客。
客车来了。车客从哪后头来的了？
怎么紧张你们了？我不想回家，过年啊！ 你们做了什么？你们做了什么？你们5个只是看了800个病，还他妈1000-4个班，还把我们差了8个班去上班，我们不想活。你自己看，你们到底想干什么？你们啊！我不要人，你把那些病人都搞走，躺在地上那个拿走。口头你不给面子说不要我干了，你们给搞了就把我免了算了，叫我滚蛋回家，这样跟我这样说。我没有闹，那病床那么多怎么办？
叫他们院长过来看看。
院长谁过来？
你让病人去跟。
没有，我去了。
把值班抬了。
啊？我不知道哪个是院长，我去了，我连1、2、3、4、5、4长热线都打了。
不要医生，我不要医生，我有医生，我当然人家我能看病，你把那个地上。
这是在打针的现场，一个男的受不了，他就要钱呀，把钱全部往地下撒，但是没有人去抢。
你把这个这样子收过去，这个口罩是不能再用了。你们不能这样子卖口罩的，你这里的话，我这样我要报警了。我要打120了。你现在这样不能，你这样的话，你肯定会卖的。不卖了。
拖着一个是啊，好黑呐，我日。
How many people have died since the coronavirus outbreak began in China? Really? What's the true situation in Wuhan? One source of information is funeral homes in Wuhan. Our reporter Undercover called them up, and the numbers they disclose are heart-wrenching.
你要是听真话还是听假话？我现在我本人都要快崩溃了。我们现在每天的运息量和火化量是平时的4到5倍。
This is an official from a government-owned funeral home in Wuhan, the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak. NTD distorted the voice to protect the official's identity. The person was talking to an NTD reporter who posed as a member of China's central government. The funeral home official says the number of bodies they received skyrocketed in recent weeks, peaking at 127 on February 3rd. But he said that's not the number being recorded officially.
我昨天总共接运的遗体，一百二十七个，招掉了168个，确诊的，确诊的数是8个。我这是有全部有死亡证书的，我手上的。
Only about 6% of the deaths are recorded as confirmed cases. If other funeral homes in Wuhan are in the same situation, where only 6% of the deaths are counted officially as part of the coronavirus death toll, the real number of lives claimed by the virus could be over 10,000. The official says that many of the patients weren't even able to be treated before passing away.
38%是医院接来的。61%是在家里死亡的。所以说这个就医的情况很不好，前几天。对。你想想，60%都在家里死的。
The person says local officials tell them to get rid of the bodies within an hour and a half, but because there are so many bodies, the funeral homes are stretched to their limit.
我真的是承受不了了。我昨天跟我的局长说，我说我就哪要疯了，我自己要去跳楼了。我说你给我下的这些任务，我真完成不了。武汉市这帮狗官把这个城市管理的一塌糊涂，他们这样搞下去，这个不敢想象了。
People who speak out with views different from the Chinese regime continue to be under threat. China has summoned or detained several doctors and citizen journalists since the outbreak started.